How you doing? She's smiling.
Yeah, Paul likes the hot legs. Hot legs. Only making money on cigarettes.
Gosh, I'm right in here. I'm gonna scoot over. I don't mean to crash. I got a 6'4". He works night shifts.
Yeah.
That's when all the action is.
And that's like, when it's colder, it's not as busy, but right in summer. I can still fall asleep. I don't know how,
Well,
like.
'cause they're on meth. That's all it is.
He tells me, if you look at the dog, you'd be in so much trouble because you'd be sleeping at night.
They'll do these studies on homeless people in the winter. Guess what? In the winter, they go to Florida. They ain't out on the street.
Yeah.
They don't want to do it in the summer. They skew what's going on.
So we do have a quorum. We can begin if you'd like. We can wait a little bit more for the chair to arrive and other members. I'll defer to the board. Otherwise, 5 minutes just to wait. We can begin then at 5:05 if no one else returns.
I'm okay with that.
Roll call today.
So are we gonna wait for 5 minutes then?
If you want,
Yeah,
is that okay with you?
Yeah, it's good.
Well, I'm confused. This is Third Amendment. This is demolition. This is home president. Oh, no, this is just stuff
that
we
your
have.
stuff?
Yeah. This is the list. See, we haven't done this in a long time either, but the interest us. This is a joke right now. Ain't giving nothing away. See, this is second amendment, and this is third amendment. So I guess this is the current one.
Sheets, yeah, quite a bit of information tonight. We'll go over them all.
Which ones is this all one set here, Paula?
Yeah.
This. And these are
You should
different.
have the two colored ones and this long one, right,
Yeah,
John?
two long ones, two color.
Okay, this.
Yeah, two long ones and two colored pictures.
Hey, John, have we ever had anybody come in with this inter-subsidy buy down?
With the,
It's URA.
the Alliance.
Yeah. We had,
Not since I've been there. We have a meeting with the Economic Alliance actually on Thursday.
we had a buy down program through the banks.
Mhm.
I think one time it might have been Huntington and BB&T where they buy down 2 or 3%. And now that the interest rates are popping up, but I didn't know what we were.
From my understanding, the Alliance, they only had one outstanding loan that they were working on.
I didn't know if anybody had applied.
But
for
no,
still,
not to my knowledge.
because it's on the website.
Yes.
I didn't see a whole. Okay. Hello, Amy.
Do we have Brandon Wood?
We're going to
Ryan,
wait
we've
till
been
5
unable
after.
to email. I'm getting a response that his email full, he has to subscribe to something else.
He said because he wants a facade.
Um,
I said, you just don't vote on it.
The other, yeah, I haven't heard from Lily as well. Otherwise, I think we can begin then.
See, this
It's a
is,
little bit of a long drive from Lost Creek today.
but it was bad this morning.
It wasn't too bad. There's, I got behind it, activities bus.
Because this can go to 2% buy.
Okay, so go ahead and call this workshop meeting to order. Thank you all for coming.
Roll call, Paula.
Thank you. Okay.
So quite a few items on the agenda this evening. We can go in any order, but these were the big points that staff has taken from the previous meetings. Specifically, we provide a lot of information regarding current demolition program information. I could say, if you'd like, that we can begin with the URA facade program in general. As you all recall, we're getting close to 1 full calendar year of having the new program guidelines in effect. This is the third amendment to the second amended downtown facade guidelines. This allows for the program to be pretty much citywide with the exception of Emily Drive, Tolly Drive locations. The amounts were upped from $2,000, roughly $3,000 maximum to $10,000. The match remained at 20%. The idea at the time was just to facilitate larger projects as opposed to just some of the limitations of a $2,000 grant. You can only do so much as opposed to structural alteration of a larger magnitude to be able to facilitate additional investment. The results, I would say mixed. We've received more applications. Quite a few of them we could not process fully as a result of just information that they had completed a lot of work off of code, so that creates some issues. When there's no building permit for the work, that's a real problem for this program. So that has limited some of the applications you've seen, but otherwise, the projects we are seeing are larger in nature in terms of cost. They have primarily been in the downtown area. We're anticipating there is another application that will be on the agenda for on February, is that now 9th, associated with caps. So all of the applicants you've pretty much been aware of now. There's a few other facades in the downtown that I would like to see addressed, but there does require that capital on the part of the applicant to be able to finalize it. So especially for broken windows and things like that in some of our commercial areas, staff is going to be reaching out to see if we can facilitate additional applications. But as it is, we're not anticipating any additional larger scale applications for the time being. So that program in total was $40,000. I think we had. I'd have to look at Kim to look at the exact numbers. Do we have those handy or? Yeah. Okay.
We have less than 10,000.
Yes.
I think it was 7 maybe that we had left.
Well, yeah. So we anticipate to have roughly $3,000 after assuming that the next application were to be approved. So we are on track to expend all of our funds before the end of the fiscal year. What we can do once we've completed the full fiscal year is provide just the exact impacts we found overall, with the exception of there's a restaurant directly across the street from this building on 3rd Street, Kelly's 2.0. When that one received money, it was also receiving funds associated with Small Business Assistance Grant. The project there was much larger in terms of the actual construction costs than many of the other projects we've seen. Most of them have been roughly at the $12,000-$15,000 range. Overall, the program, I mean, I can imagine some fixes for the program. In particular, looking at limitations on the types of improvements that are allowed. If the board would want to see specific improvements related to not just signage, but having like structural changes to the building. Additionally, depending on if we want to facilitate as a board, specific redevelopment programs, working with, if we're able to get the Small Business Assistance Grant refunded for a few more fiscal years, working with those applicants directly to potentially facilitate a larger capital injection occurring with any new business that's happening with those applications. So I don't have that information at this moment. We don't have the program as it is right now. The Small Business Assistance Grant Program has utilized all of the funds that were allocated previously, and that was a American Rescue Plan Act funded activity. So it was one-time monies.
And that was through the council, not through us.
That's correct.
Okay. We had nothing to do with it.
Well, it's just there might be an opportunity to encourage leveraging of monies with other, as opposed to just giving money to, like the board had one project for Destion Care that just involved painting. There was a clear impact. I mean, you were able to see the newer building. It's whiter now and it looks cleaner. Does the board want to spend more on those type of efforts, or on, I guess, the larger projects that may have there's more money being spent, so it may have a different type of effect insofar as you're not going to get as much, there might not necessarily be as much visual impact associated with the improvement as compared to some of the, I guess, maintenance and really the general building improvements that should be occurring that haven't happened. So when you're fixing glazing on windows, when you're fixing framing around doors, things like that, as opposed to signage and just block repair. I mean, masonry repair it's a necessary need. It's a need, but it's not necessarily going to have the same visual pop, if that makes sense. So I would like to get, I guess, some guidance from the board on what you would like to see the facade program do, especially we're looking at the next fiscal year. That way we can program the funds. We won't have to necessarily go back and amend the program bylaws, but staff will be able to take that information into when we receive applications and provide clear guidance to applicants on what to expect.
You talking about roofs, or what are you talking about expanding to?
Well, so for this one, I'm not, for the facade program, not talking about expanding this program at all. Just having more rails with regards to what you want to see from applications if you want to target funding to anything in particular.
I think for me, the grants we've been asked, the applications we've received have been pretty narrow. And we've granted money to entities multiple times, or people who are getting multiple funds. I'd be interested in us reaching out to some of the smaller business owners, some of the people that have been in downtown and around and don't have some of the capital to invest, because they've invested in being down here. I mean, there are many businesses. I understand we want new business coming in 100%. I agree with that. But I feel short-sighted with this program right now. That's just my opinion. I just feel like it's been very narrow.
I think it's been a success. I mean, we went through most of our money. People have came to it. Maybe we could market a little bit better. And I think when we give a grant, we should go take a picture in front of the business and put it in the paper. This is what UR is doing. This is what the fund, we're making Clarksburg look better. And we don't do that. You know, we do a ribbon cutting, but we don't go out and say, listen, we painted this building. We put a new sign. We're investing in businesses in Clarksburg. And I think we need to do that. When we give a grant, we should go out and take a picture, put a picture of the building. URA does this.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, then more people will come and say, hey, why not? Let's get on this. You know, when they get a building permit, give them an application. But I mean, we've been doing this program for a long time with people. Maybe we could market a little bit better. But I think when your money's almost gone and you're not halfway through the year, and you know, we have it. You come in one time for the fiscal year. It's been good. I mean, there are a lot of things we could do, and just beautify the down next door. We got them awnings that's still sitting there, and they're supposed to help. We'll get in that, I guess. But when are they supposed to be taken down when you close your business?
Well, that structure is unique. It hits 2 years on the condemnation list next month. Yep. My understanding is that Uptown, now not necessarily the city's involvement, but the Uptown has been working with the property owner to hopefully change the signage that's currently been painted over with pink and doing something about the awnings. But
or start fining them. After you fine them for a while, they're going to say, hey. And then when you get the judgment, collect on the fine. We got to beautify downtown.
Well, the problem when it comes to signage, especially if it's based on like what the awnings say, our ability to collect fines on that property is going to be negligible to the amount of staff time and resources that's going to go into collecting that.
But we have ordinances, and we need to follow our ordinances, and I don't think we're doing that.
Okay, that's noted. Yeah. One thing so to channel this then, so opportunities for involving smaller businesses, smaller entities into this process to help out with downtown redevelopment and I'm kind of sensing then that with that, then looking at opportunities where areas or if something is not meeting the current zoning code related to design, if there's a way that this board can be an effectual change agent, then we should pursue that.
Slum and blight.
Okay. We will, I can get into this with the comp plan a little bit, but staff will be looking into the zoning ordinance with planning commission. I recommend anyone to attend if you'd like to. It isn't exactly a thrilling process going through zoning and subdivision, but we are going to be going for more form-based code when we do the reviews. So looking at how buildings look, how parking lots look, how the land looks, as opposed to necessarily just looking at how a building is used for all intents and purposes from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Hey, John, another thing that'd be nice if we can have a little card that when you come in for a building permit or to get a new business, we give them some information on our loan buy down subsidy, the URA facade program. Let them know that's available. I mean, they could find it out by going to the website, but some people don't know it. But if you come get your building permit, that means you're going to do something. This is what we offer you when you come to the city of Clarksburg. I think we need to let people here's your building permit and here's what URA can do for you, the city. I think that would be a plus.
And Paul, we're going to be doing some work. That's how I'll put that, because it is something I've noticed that the materials that we do have those materials now. They don't exactly read very well when you're trying to explain just B&O tax in general. So Paul and staff will work together to.
Got the utmost confidence in Mr. Jones.
Well, we can make something that's not only makes that information available, but something that's actually practical. Because, like I said, now we have the information. It's just you're getting right to it. It's not necessarily being delivered in a manner that's best for time present. That's pretty much all I have for the URA facade program. Any other comments?
Get us some more money.
Well, we'll be asking for the same 40,000 again for the facade program. We will going down to E, the structural preservation program discussion. I guess we can go to that now if you'd like. Yeah.
March, April, May, June.
And so CAPS is roughly 7,000.
Okay.
So,
And I tell you what, there was a beautification of Clarksburg. They had that bad awning there, and he did a beautiful job on it. His sign it's very professional, it looks classy. It looks New York City.
Mm-hmm. Is there a reason not to ask for more money?
Well, we kept it at the same amount due to in terms of discussion with the budget. Steve, I'm not sure we will have an additional opportunity. So,
City manager, can you bring that up to council maybe to fund a little bit more money than that? Or
There'll be an opportunity for all the organizations to present at a budget work session, and it'll come up at that.
So let's do something, earmark a percentage of the collections that we get when we start going after the old demos, come back to the URA. And then we can refund that back into this project.
I don't think it's unrealistic to ask for 50,000 at least. I mean, I think it's only fair to say, okay, this has been successful. We, for all intents and purposes, ran out of money at month 7, and that's successful.
Or do we cut it down to 5,000? Would that help more?
But we don't have to cut it down. We have the discretion. We just haven't been using discretion. We've been funding full amounts that people ask, and that's something I think we have to ask ourselves is how we now know this year what people are asking. They're asking for a large amount. When we approved 10,000, we said, well, but we can use discretion. I don't think there's been one we haven't fully fund it.
I personally don't like discretion. I'm not going to give you 10,000 and you 5, and you got the why. It's if you follow the guidelines and you meet the guidelines, I say give it to you, because I don't want politics involved with this. And I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying, Aim, but if you qualify for it, it's like, why didn't I get my 10 and he did?
Well, and I think if we had not, I think that's going to require us to go back and talk about it again, because I think we wouldn't have approved it at 10 from a lot of our discussions
Yes.
if we hadn't said, oh, but you can give them whatever amount. I think what we know now is people are going to ask, and it's realistic that we could be out in 4 asks. And with some of these, honestly, you could get 3 that you fund, fully, and the next one, they don't get all the money that they need for it. I mean, it's 10,000 is a great amount, but people are going to ask for it.
I would too.
Which
I
means,
mean,
yeah,
when you only get it once a year.
absolutely, and then you're out of it.
Yeah.
So
So that's why they can fund us more.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yep.
a project that
it's
seems to
worth
be
an
working.
ask, and we won't be offended if it doesn't. I
Because
mean,
they
it's
are
worth an
coming to
ask.
us and they're using it, and you can tell the difference in the
Huh?
business.
We could justify this as you were able to provide up to 5 general awards prior with 10,000, 5,000, 50,000 amount. You're able to have 5 general awards. So
Let's
But
move the
hopefully
sidewalk
more.
money to the URA.
You just defy however.
okay,
If we're wanting it to be a bigger program, if council,
Yep.
Agrees it's a bigger, useful program, I think we got to proportionally
Mhm.
raise it a little bit.
City manager, can we transfer some sidewalk money to the URA? And we could
We can talk about a lot of things.
Maybe-
I'm not gonna give you any commitments.
no, I mean, you bring it to count. I mean, you're on count. You are the city manager, that you could relay it to them like, hey, this is an idea that we have.
Yeah,
That
that'll
I don't
all
know
be-
how much sidewalk money that we're actually using, but maybe we could tie that into the business. Say, we'll repair the sidewalk in front of you also. And, just something to throw out.
Yeah.
At the work session, we can bring that up.
Okay.
All right, so demo program?
okay. So we put this map together. Blue dots. That is 2023, 13 properties. Look, which one is it? Near Lee, yeah, it's Lee. There's 2 dots there. You can't quite see it because it's right houses next to each other. The larger one, or the map with all the stars and squares, that gets you into the context of where these demolitions are occurring near areas of vacant properties and condemned properties. There are quite a few clusters that we're probably going to see additional demolition activity in the future, just based on, especially looking at Northview and looking at the getting closer to Broadway, and then just in general, like over the would that be western side of Staley. Overall, this is a significantly smaller number of demolitions. If you look at this one map, 3 of them, the red dots or red squares, that indicates that they were fire structures. They were not planned for demolition. With those properties, we have to do the asbestos testing if possible, but we're automatically treating them like a property that has asbestos.
So
And we have
these
to
were
get a contractor.
Fire structures?
The four of them were
Which
one on Milford,
ones?
Camden, South Second,
Oh,
and
okay.
Floyd.
I was looking at the wrong blue dot.
So like South Second Street, 324. That's the one that's behind the courthouse. Many of these, I mean, it's a problem that we're going to continue to have as long as we're having vacant and condemned structures that are in such close areas. There's going to be increased opportunities for fire.
None of these people were these condemned properties that caught on fire, or just properties that caught on fire and then are just sitting there?
Well, it appeared to be a mix from what I saw, but yeah.
Okay, so these people don't have any fire insurance on these properties, or were they rentals or what?
I don't think they may at least have fire insurance on.
Were they, but they were occupied buildings and caught on fire?
Some were, some wasn't. I got one that's damaged.
Were they rentals or were they prop owner occupied? Do you know? Okay.
Maybe one of them might have been rental. I'd have to double check.
I'm just curious, do we have an ordinance if you have a rental that you have to carry liability insurance on it? I don't know if you can.
I don't believe it's in the rental registration.
You've got the.
Yeah,
It's a lot of empty property.
Yeah, I just got this, so I never really got a chance to look over.
I don't know if that language is in there or not. That brings up a good point.
yeah. One of the problems, especially when it comes to vacant properties, is you're talking about insurance coverage. It's going to be almost more than twice conventional coverage.
Or if they even insure an empty.
Exact-
building,
well,
most of them don't.
If you have a vacant property, you don't have vacant coverage, it's not covered.
Do we have an ordinance? I know Montague County has it, Morgan County. If you have a vacant business, they have a sliding scale where they charge you a fee if it's unoccupied. So I have a friend that has a building, it's rented, but the person that's renting it hasn't actually occupied it. And they're charging him for an unoccupied building. It costs him more. I don't know if we have anything. Give an incentive, hey, let's fill your buildings up. You just can't leave it sitting there.
We had like building registration.
And if it's vacant,
We
they
build for vacant building fees for a lot of.
they don't what?
Pay them.
Well, that's our problem. We don't hold anybody accountable that owes us money. And I think that's really one thing that we need to work on. Maybe it's, I don't know if it's URA or not, but it's the city.
We've got things against the real estate. That's all.
Okay, now you can go get a writ. And if it's a rental property, they probably have a house that they live in. I guarantee you, when you put a lien on their house, or you go to their paycheck and sweep their bank account, you'll get their attention. And we can legally do that. I don't know why we're not, but that's how you'll get your money. Put a lien on your house and you go to buy a car and they say, Kim, I'm sorry, you got a lien on your house, can't give you that car. They'll come pay their lien. And we're not doing that. I think we're failing doing it. My personal opinion, we're failing. That's why we got $2.5 million out that we can't collect. And, you know, you can only do so much, but when they tell you, go do a writ on their paycheck, you'll get their attention and we'll get our money. But
Do we do 12 demolitions a year?
Well, it depends. I believe, well, the last year or the year before, we did
We
close to
only had
58.
200 We only had 200,000.
Yeah.
Demolition. But this year, when you get a fire damaged structure, it's automatic. Then, and when it's burnt like that, it's a total loss. You gotta treat it as an asbestos structure, and it's gonna be a hot load. So those are structures that's gonna be bid out when the asbestos contractor will be demolished anyway.
So we're,
That pretty much eats your money up right there.
yeah, we had one building that was 200,000 itself.
Oh, yeah.
Took the whole year's budget.
so these 12 may or may not be demoed in 23, depending on if another emergency comes up
Most
or.
of the ones on the list, they've already signed voluntary agreements to pay for
The ones on
Yeah.
Okay. Because this is a lot.
I gotta thank Jen a lot for that, because she's helping out a good bit, getting a lot of people to come up and pick those applications up and get them signed, so
Good.
appreciate that.
Well, I mean,
Helping a lot with that.
I think our biggest problem is this, because our neighborhoods are the soul of our community. And when you have structures like this, nobody wants to live by them. And then you get vagrants coming in the house. I know where I live in Staley. If y'all ever want to take a drive and come on Milford Street, once you hit the pizza shop, you got a building with a great big piece of plywood in it. And then you got houses, they've got mold on the siding. Do we not have any ordinance that says you got to make your house look presentable? I know in neighboring cities, it doesn't look like that. And if they're old and it's not a rental, let's get the Boy Scouts and let's go power washing. But and then you go by Rich Oil, and what do you have there? I got to drive by it every day. The mayor drives by it every day. You drive by it every day, Amy. Do you like it? I don't. Nobody's going to want to buy my house if I go to sell it. I mean, and it's been sitting there for years. We did put a couple condemned signs on it, but let's face it, the jobs are going to be, we'll have our jobs here, but the factories and the airport's out there. But we're going to live here. And if we can't have neighborhoods that you want to live in, we're never going to grow. And I think this is our biggest problem. We got to do something.
What are each of these?
So the one that has date registered with a little square on it, it's the
Yeah.
thinner document. This is your vacant property registration list, the registry, and then the thicker one, this is your condemnation list.
So how long, when they're on this vacant list, these are not condemned, they're just vacant?
Yes. Well, they're identified as vacant, yeah.
And there's no utilities. Are they livable? Are they, should, and are they paying the fee?
Some of them do, some of them don't.
So what are we doing? What can we do to the ones that aren't, to get them, hey, go rent my property because it's costing me $100 a month?
All we can do is put a lien against the ones that don't pay.
Okay. And then you can do your abstract and go attach their paychecks. Or put a lien on the house they live in because they're evidently not living in these houses. So they got another home.
When that's on here,
Pardon?
it shows on here the addresses of the owners.
Yes.
Right. So they're not living there. So that means go put a lien on their house that they live in. So what's going to happen if they sit in this despair, nobody living in, and there's no gas, water, or electric? The house is going to go into despair, probably. Mold. It's going to get cold. The ceilings are going to crack.
It'll get condemned.
Amen.
Yeah, eventually condemn them, yes.
So we need to get proactive, and guys, you got to do something with these because we're going to have more condemned houses, and we're going to have more plywood on them, then we're going to have more vagrants living in them. And I mean, we got to really get proactive on this and put some bite. When we give you a fine, you are going to pay it.
And that's something we've asked the city attorney to do some research on our home rule powers to be able to potentially look at other avenues to enforce property owners being required to maintain their properties and not have them in a state of condemnation. Looking at having point of sale possibilities that when you actually make the real estate transaction, certain requirements of the property are met. So if it's feasible, if it's legal to require that the owner make the property not be condemned prior to sale, if there's a way that can happen, we're investigating it.
So what is exactly is our process right now? So if somebody comes to you and says, this house is a mess, blah, 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 what code enforcement goes out?
Yes.
And if they're not up to code, what happens?
We write them a notice of violation.
Okay,
They either correct the violation, or if they don't correct it, we'll take them, write them a citation, take them to court. It becomes a legal issue for the judge at that point. But if they don't correct it, we can ultimately condemn the property.
okay. So
We
if
got
they,
160 or so properties condemned right now.
How long do they have to correct it? Do you have to submit a remediation plan to you within?
We usually require that they give us a plan of action as to how we want to bring the property back up to code. And we usually just issue permits 30 days at a time, because if you issue one permit, they won't do anything. You gotta do it 30 days at a time, keep showing up.
a little bit of time. So given the citation, it goes to court and the judge
If
can
they
then,
don't correct it,
if they don't correct it, and then what, magistrate or circuit court judge?
it can go to either one,
Okay,
usually the municipal court. But if they want to carry it on up to circuit court or however they can.
I mean, some of these houses have been 15, 16, 17, it's been 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
so then do they get, once it's condemned, what's the penalty of having it condemned? Do they get monthly bills? Do they have fines?
What can happen is after the 2-year period where we, the city, are then authorized to take the property.
So they can only be on this 2 years, is can be on this list?
That's,
They can be on more than 2
Yeah.
years, but they have to be on there at least 2 years for state statute.
But
Okay.
after 2 years,
Then-
the state can take it, but then we have to
The state
upkeep
code
it.
says that it's the owner's option. whether or not they choose to abate the violation or demolish the house. And that's up to the owner. But after that, we don't need any consent from the owner at that point.
But we don't have any mechanism there. If several of these people that are out of state, I mean, if they just walk away and leave the condemned property, maybe they inherited, maybe they didn't even want it. I mean, I don't think everybody on there is bad, but I mean, what's their incentive to do anything with that property? Or what's the punishment if they don't?
Well,
What's the disincentive?
There is nothing.
I'm just hearing.
First two houses been up here since 2015.
What's I'm just hearing we have a list,
Mhm.
and I'm
so,
ignorant about it. So
It all pretty much comes down to the monies available for demolition. You know,
It
as much
should,
money as we can get in the demolition fund, we'll use that money at least every year. We're down 200 plus structures since I've been here.
oh, you've torn down a lot. I mean, you've done a lot, but at the rate we're talking millions to get this list cleaned
We're
up.
looking at probably 25,000 per structure.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's get it out to an asbestos contract.
Yeah.
We can't let this continue.
Well, now, for the structures that we get clean asbestos reports on, the city crew will take those structures down, which is about a third of that cost.
We got to make them pay it, and we're not making them pay it. It's not our responsibility to tear down their property that they own, especially if they own multiple properties. Do we fill a financial form and say, hey, you don't have it, we'll take it. But if you're worth $2 million, we shouldn't tear your property down and say, oh, well, don't pay it. That's what happens. Nobody pays it. And really, if you do pay it, I don't know why you are, because if you don't, nothing happens to you. And that's what's got to change.
Well, the worst of the worst properties is the ones that get ready with the demolition program first.
Yeah.
I don't run the demolition program, but I help with the demolition orders or anything we do. City engineer and public works does a lot of demolition without bidding it out to an asbestos contractor, which saves the city a pile of money.
I think the city, and I think the city and the Department of Public Works, I think you all have done a great job. I mean, I've been impressed with how cleaned up and how quickly some of these structures are down with little impact on neighborhoods and people. I mean, you're not getting in people's way. I've been really, really impressed with that. I guess I look at this and I think we keep talking about it, and I think you're right, Johnny Joe, to what end? I mean, what can the city, what do we do with this? I mean,
I
chip away
say
at it?
hold the property owner accountable.
Well, not every structure on that list is a demo candidate, of course, that ever going to go to demo. A lot of these structures are uncondemned, a lot of them are bought, sold, rehabbed into viable structures again.
And that's our goal.
Yeah,
Is-
and we do that each and every day, and that list never changes. It's up and down each month, because we always want to continue with them structures. There's always going to be structures that come back off.
Now, I've also, since I've started, I've also started working with some of the people that has condemned structures. And I have managed to get at least 5 of them uncondemned and in livable conditions again. And
Amen.
it's just me going out, doing inspections, telling them what they gotta do. I give them a 30-day pass, they work on what's on the list. I give them another list the next time I go. And then some of them, it takes them 4 months to get it fixed, some of them, it takes them 2 months. But we've been doing pretty good on at least a 4-month schedule
I
of
think
getting them uncondemned.
what you did was reached out and said, we got to do something. If they don't get a letter from you, they're not going to spend any money. They don't care. But you've been proactive and it's starting to work, but that's what we need to do.
Well, unfortunately, I was also the one that condemned it. So, but I try to tell them, I said, I had to condemn it because of this, and I give them the reasons why. And then I work with them until it's uncondemned again.
And I think the key
So
is,
that's the process.
once you go out, reach out to them, and you have to go back in 30 days. Did you do the work? Yes or no? I mean,
Well, yeah, that's the thing with the 30-day thing now. I go back every 30 days and I'm checking on these properties. And they're getting, and a lot of them don't have a whole lot of money, but they're getting like maybe 1 or 2 of the projects done. And I'm making sure they're getting their permits when they're doing them. for this one and this one and this one, it requires a permit. So you have to come up to our office and get your permit as well as you're doing the jobs. And I've been trying to just walk them through the process, and it's working. 4 houses uncondemned.
And that's the goal, and that's what we need to do. You gotta get out, and you gotta go follow up whenever you tell them, if you don't,
That's the thing.
5 or 6 people every week about getting a house.
Yeah.
Every week.
good. I mean, that's what you gotta do.
And is this just, I mean, I see one from 2013, but most of these are pretty recent. What about any condemnations older than that?
So total list right there, the dates on that.
Which
So there aren't any older.
list you on? Amy?
The condemned.
Condemned.
Oh, this, the big 50.
Yeah.
I think it's like 80 some of them.
Yeah, I want to say the oldest is like the Waldo.
Yeah, we're doing assessments now on a lot of these structures so that we can get this together, get the palms, think about.
This is the demo list.
So there's nobody on here like for 10 years or, I mean, what?
Well,
There are a few,
There's
yeah.
a 2013 and a 26, when I look at the date added, there's one that's 2013, one that's 2016, but most of these are 2017 and there was 30 some in 2022. So what happened to any of the condemnations prior to that?
There's a lot of empty lots in town.
Okay, so those are all the ones you took.
took.
You've torn those down kind of by time.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Do we own the lots?
No, there's
Okay.
a few lots in there, but we don't want them.
I understand,
You
but
don't want
there,
to go mow. We don't
I
want-
saw some
city
lots
doesn't
like
wanna
on
go mow.
Mulberry Avenue. There's a couple big ones would be great to build some new houses on. And that street's got a lot better, but then you go in, you got the blue house, and then you got a guy running a logging company in his front yard.
I have been dealing with that man for a long time. It looked a lot worse before it started.
Would you want to live by him?
What?
Would you want to be his neighbor?
No. But I have been working with him to try to clean it up as much as I can, but it's not helping me having that blue house there either. Because I don't know how.
That street's got a lot better.
There's been
though.
a lot of issues, and I have been going to these condemned houses myself. I do a lot of driving around, and I've been actually getting out, checking the condemned houses, and I'm finding people going in and out of some of these houses that should not be going in and out of. The blue house is one of them.
And maybe the police officers, when they drive around, just take a note, hey, check this house out here. Because they run the streets all the time.
Well, that's normally what we do. We get with Jason, give him a list.
Yeah.
About properties.
But Mulberry that street, Locust has gotten a lot better.
Yes.
And I just said, man, why don't somebody build a house? I mean, that was our goal. When URA in the past, where we owned the lots, we put up 2 or 3 different houses through the housing development. West Harrison County, we built one in Broadway, one in Northview, 2 in Northview. And if we own the lots, that's why if we're going to own the lots, let's take 2 or 3 together. So when we invest that money, the housing authority will take it, build something on it, and then make new housing for people.
What they did in Wheeling, they took, I think it was 3-block area, and they made an amazing space with tennis courts and basketball courts and a turf field and some bathrooms it's community space for people and kids to use. I drive around and look for that. I drive around and look, I'm like, where can we put something like this?
I mean, I don't know if that's what we need to do as a group one day, get on a bus and just take one neighborhood at a time, but all these houses here they've been demolished.
No, all those properties, the list you're holding are the condemnation properties. So they are currently still standing. They're just in that condemned state.
And these are scheduled.
Those are the scheduled demolitions. Yeah, and if you look at all of those have a corresponding star on the other
Okay.
map.
Little yellow dots.
I just have one thing, as a citizen that lives here, what are we gonna do about this? What are we gonna do? I mean,
We're gonna want the ordinance requires with this, we're gonna hand it down each and every year or so.
I think it's a legal question too. I think part of it is us knowing. You said that the city attorney was looking into some of this, and it sounds like we've got an excellent process to get to these lists. And then it's a lot of legwork to get people out of that. But what do we do with people who don't do anything? And that's really becomes a legal question. I mean, that's when you start kicking it over that direction.
Did
And
we,
it's beyond us.
did we pay, these are demoed, correct? Or
No,
No,
no.
these are condemned?
These are condemned, and some of the condemned are also on the vacant list. So
Okay.
there are some crossovers. So this is the vacant list. This one right here with the square, that's vacant property.
The
That's
thick
this
one?
But it's-
No, this is vacant.
Yeah,
Okay,
and these are condemned.
okay. Now you,
I'll get you all a copy of the license registration orders too, next meeting.
yeah, because evidently though, if we're supposed to go into these places and you're supposed to have a 30-day plan to do it, we are not doing it. Not,
We don't win condemned properties every 30 days, so it's just whenever like.
no, we condemn them, you give them a list. This is what you need to do. They have a remediation plan. Well, evidently after 30 days, 90 days, whatever they said they were going to do, they did not do. And that's what we need to change.
They've got 2 years, they can shut it down.
Okay.
We can do it now.
I see some houses from 2017.
After 2 years, we can move it to them, if the problem.
I see half of this is probably more than 2 years. So I'm saying to correct our slum and blight, which is what URA does, we got to take some action on this. And let's change. Maybe we need more code enforcement people.
It comes down to money for demolition.
But we shouldn't have to demo them. They own them.
A lot
And-
of people live out of state, we might never find them.
When there are a couple deceased on here.
Who's paying the property? Is anybody paying property taxes on them?
And then-
That's what I'm saying. There's not really any motivation for somebody who's inherited a piece of property and lives out of state. They can just let it, you can just let it go. And there are a couple deceased people on here on the,
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to say. I've had to have the city attorney, because there was properties that I've been dealing with that I've been trying to, I send these notices out, it's not going to anybody, they're dead. Okay, they're gone. So I had to have the city attorney to look up some of these places and finding out these wills, these people, the family members never did a probate on the wills. So you gotta find the family members, try to track the family members down just to find somebody to send a letter to take care of the properties. So now I've even got our lawyer involved, trying to help me find somebody to send it to. So a lot of the issues that we're having too are, you have deceased people and nobody to send anything to because proper paperwork was not done.
when tracking down people who owe money is a thankless job. I mean, it just,
And we've got
in ours-
corporations on here though.
Yeah.
well, and it's hard to pursue out of state. To
Mhm.
collect people out of state.
But here's a couple in Bridgeport.
All right, so what else do we need to know about demo? We need more money, we need more people.
One of the things we are looking at in looking at that form-based code is how do we get properties that are not necessarily vacant, not necessarily condemned, but how do we maintain at least some standard for the property so that it would at least maintain either a residential character that's productive or a commercial character that's productive. So zoning, we're looking at that with the planning commission, how to enhance our design guidelines. Penalties involved with that then to be able to have enforcement that works. We're also looking at, we'll get into the land reuse agency discussion, but that could be a conduit. The URA, you all have the ability to use eminent domain. If we demolish a property, I'm going to argue, I'm not sure if Jeff or Richard would have the same argument. They're going to have different legal theories, but the value of that property is not going to be worth much. So the eminent domain proceeding should be advantageous for the city. If it's something, then to have those chunks of property, having the land bank acquire properties next door, their tax sale, then you can have the conglomeration, that big conglomeration of property. So you have a big cluster. Now you have the building lot, you have that space. So it's something we're working on. It's something we're moving slowly on. We have to make sure we're doing it by the book on this because West Virginia has very, very liberalized property ownership rules. It's difficult for us to take property, but it's also just in general, the tax sale process, the whole process is really beneficial to owners that may not be doing anything with their property. We also have a tax system on property taxes that does not necessarily encourage investment in properties. So that's something we have to live with. It's a challenge for all the municipalities, all the counties in the state. So that's why we're working with DEP to hopefully provide some additional monies for demolitions. We should have more information on that in the coming months, but John King, we're working with John King's office at this DEP on that program. That was the one that it was like 9 million last year, and I think it's more like 20 million this year. But hopefully, we should be able to have some fundings come in for demolitions and additional programs to facilitate redevelopment and to help get this problem under control.
Do we still get the grants from the state? We used to get loans from them.
We can get loans, but we haven't. I mean, we can get West Virginia Housing Development Fund will give us loans, but those are usually structured 1, 2, 3, like a 3-year loan, which nowadays that's great, but it wasn't too advantageous a couple months ago.
Well, we used to do it 10 years ago. When this program first started, we used the housing fund, and it was the diamond of the state. That's what they said. Clarksburg's leading the state in this, and then all of a sudden we quit doing it. And we were revolving council would give us money, and then we'd collect from these people, and we try to tear down the houses with people said we're going to pay you back. A lot did, and a lot didn't. And then all of a sudden we quit that money. I don't know what happened, but
I want to be mindful of people's time as we're heading into the dinner. So we still got a lot of letters on here to cover. So are we okay if we move on to the
go ahead.
next one?
I invite Kim this evening if we have any just general discussions regarding finances and lien activity, but it sounds like most of those have already been covered.
Yeah. We want more money and we want people to suffer, pay their liens. I mean, whether to pay for their, pay their liens.
I'll tell you that this dealing with actors in the real estate that do not have your best interests at hand is a challenge. And it happens in a lot of jurisdictions with real estate values that are much higher. But what we're seeing, especially with some of these firms, like we have to be proactive against them because they are not here to help us at all.
So it would be nice, I think, if we could get from the city attorney, where do we have any teeth? Where, I mean, it sounds like you guys are doing the process as far as we can go. Then we get to year 2 of nothing done. We have to decide, does it make sense financially for us to take a property? Very often, no, if we're going to have to demo it. But then we are, you're mowing the grass, it's taking out property values, you're fielding complaints. Where are the landowners responsible? So I think that's something that it would be good for us to get information on.
Okay. And that sounds like we'll coordinate with the city attorney on that.
Yeah.
You can read West Virginia Code 812.16 too, and that'll shed a lot of light on the whole demolition process as far as the state statutes concerned.
Well, I think it's one thing for us to take over and demo, and it's a cost to us. I think we're trying for it not to continue to be such a cost physically and financially to the city while people walk away. Again, you can't help somebody passes away. There are extenuating circumstances, but I think we're wanting to relieve some of the burden to the city. And what are our legal means of doing that? All right.
The comprehensive plan will be we have a final public hearing with the city council on Thursday the 2nd. The comp plan includes 4 focus areas that are generalized goals for the city, of which the one that impacts the area the most involves keeping it clean, specifically looking at ways to encourage property maintenance, and with that, then going into the zoning ordinance changes and form-based code changes we were discussing. That process will, with that zoning ordinance change, depending on funding available for the planning services, we should be able to have it complete this calendar year. How it is put into place, I mean, it's going to be a discussion with the Planning Commission, and we will most likely be engaging with the URA then for feedback on specific property maintenance issues that are concerning. The structural preservation program, staff would like to expand your program offerings to include a structural preservation program that would be, instead of the facades, the internals of a building. During the Small Business Assistance Grant initial discussions earlier this year, or earlier last year, we received quite a number of comments related to elevator systems and other unique, other fire escape and safety additions and stairwells and things like that are required for buildings. Many of our historic structures do not meet current fire code. The Empire has wonderful marble stairs. They wrap around, and they're only about this. There is no way that's ever going to meet fire code. There's plenty of other examples. Additionally, there are other structural components with some of our buildings, especially along Main Street. There's concern regarding stormwater management that's happened. I mean, the stormwater management wasn't really considered that much, at least in the scope it is nowadays when these blocks were built. As a result, some of the structures are seeing wall retention issues, which, I mean, getting ramjack out to a house is expensive, but when we're talking about some of these structures, it becomes really expensive. In addition, you generally have to engage with an architectural and engineering firm. So to some property owners, that makes the feasibility for ever doing a repair or addition to their structure to make it more usable, it will never happen. So the change of ownership will have to happen before anything. If there's a way that we can assist these businesses while also meeting the requirements of historic preservation, staff believes that that would be a benefit to the community and would be a good partnering role with the facade grant to be able to facilitate additional redevelopment, especially as it relates to upper floors, which can then be, for many of these structures, could be additional residential spaces. I'll be getting some materials together, most likely in March, for that discussion. I'd have to go back to the budget. We put a placeholder in for funding associated with that. We discussed the land reuse agency briefly. That's land bank regulations. The land bank is kind of like a URA. You all have eminent domain, though. They would not. The catch, though, is they're able to buy properties at tax sale first if they're under $50,000. So most of when we previously went through tax sale, this was going on a year ago now. It's a unique process. It was with the sheriff's office. It's completely changed now. The state auditors involved. They have mapping available so we can pinpoint exactly which properties would be on not just the delinquency list, so what they call purgatory, the ones that are never being sold, but then also being proactive and potentially taking some of these properties, especially ones that some of these companies that are on this condemned list like to buy, to be more proactive in getting some of these properties that could be beneficial and actually active as opposed to being just flippers on tax sale. If you're aware of how tax sale works, it's a very, very attractive financial instrument in the state of West Virginia. You're able to recoup a 1% interest per month capital compounded So I like to say it's 18%. It's a little different, but there's a pretty large financial incentive to buy a tax sale property and not do anything with it. So state auditor is aware of that. They've been very engaged, as they're also working with the DEP program on the demolitions as well. So I mean, this is something we're hopeful that working with the current administration at the state level, we're able to get some of these programs operational and potentially funded without utilizing general fund revenues. Finally, if there's any topics from the board that we can address.
If you have any questions.
Just the Glen Elk redevelopment, just we're gonna do, I haven't heard much about the Parsons or the Iquina and the whole scope of what we're gonna do. And there was talk, I could hear a little bit in the city council meeting about wanting to put sidewalks in, but.
So we have before the West Virginia Department of Transportation, they administer what's called the Transportation Alternatives Program grant. It's that and the Recreational Trails Program grants. Transportation Alternatives is a very large federal pot of money that is used primarily. It's an outgrowth for what used to be called safe routes to schools. The idea was that kids walking to school should be able to walk on a sidewalk. So it is by default a sidewalk program. We are out of a total of 3 transportation alternative programs. The number 1 program, highest priority, was the Glen Elk Sidewalk Program. This would be a project utilizing TIF funds to be able to leverage roughly $750,000 of city monies into sidewalks for pretty much the entirety of the Glen Elk TIF district. It was unique because most of the transportation alternative program applications don't have dedicated funding like that. It's especially funding that we're able to show year over year contribution. We're very hopeful with that it would be funded. We're not going to know about that until closer to, I want to say May, hopefully, with that, because it is the governor's prerogative to announce those awards. So we have that program, we have that grant application. We have with the Parsons, we are working with we're working with Harrison County Economic Development Corporation on an EPA Brownfield Community Assessment Grant. That is specifically with our application, we identified the Waldo and the Parsons as 2 of the main projects, and then there are 3 others in the county. The EDC is taking the lead on that. Stantec was the general engineer. We would anticipate being able to utilize these funds for the phase 1 environmental assessments for the Waldo, for the Parsons, other large structures in the city, most likely targeting some of the additional known brownfield. So if there's a few abandoned automotive places that we would also look at. You get an engineer, they go in, it's a non-invasive test. They just see if there's any contaminants there. We're able to leverage asbestos and lead-based paint as an environmental contaminant. That's how we're able to go for brownfields funds. With that money also, if granted, we'd be able to actually fund redevelopment plans for those specific sites. You have to have a redevelopment plan if you're ever going to get full funding for the eventual phase 2 remediation plan. The community-wide neighborhood assessment, though, we had discussed having one for the entire Glen Elk neighborhood. We did not have funding for that. We have included portions of that into other grant activities. So we had a grant that we submitted for the National Endowment for the Arts. It would encompass the downtown and Glen Elk in some of that. But as it is, staff has not engaged directly with a contractor or a produced an RFP to complete that work, as it has not been funded.
I think if you want to build sidewalks and you have a plan of what's going to go inside of the sidewalks, you might be able to get more money. So, I mean, if you're going to build sidewalks, what's going to go there? And then if we do the Parsons and you redevelop that and you look down the street and you have a bigger safety hazard than the Parsons looking at you, are you going to develop that property when you look down the street and you see the building at the end of the corner? And that's why I said you got to do all of them now. Would you put a housing development in there in the Parsons and then you're looking at that, which is a safety hazard, bigger safety hazard than the Parsons with the bricks falling down? So I'm just saying, have a plan. If you're going to say, hey, let's put sidewalks up, what are we going to put inside the sidewalks? Or, you know, we're going to go after medical, or we're going after retail, brew pubs, or.
And from a planning perspective, that it would be best practice.
And I'm sure the other building at the end of the corner is probably Brownsville too, because it was a manufacturing plant at one time.
Well, with our ability to leverage those funds for the biggest concern we have with the Parsons and any of these large buildings is what's on site. We don't really know what we're dealing with. So phase one, and then phase two actually. Phase one's when you just go and you look at it. Phase two is when the engineer actually takes samples, extracts things, and gets to the point of remediation. We have properties that people are trying to sell that they don't have any. There's no phase one has ever occurred. There's been no real determination on how the use of the structure has been occurring, because there's just this expectation that it will sell. The benefit, I can see the benefit. Staff can only do so much based on the resources we have allocated to us. If the board would like, we can include that in our budget request for funds associated with the Glen Elk redevelopment plan.
I think we have an awful lot on our plate right now.
And this is good that we've done this, because this is the first time that we've ever done this. That somebody sat down and said, hey, here's where we're at, and we've got a lot of slum and blight in this city. And we're going to stop it from becoming a ghetto. And we've done this. This is the first time we've done this. And I think it was a great thing to do. But, you know, we've got a lot of work ahead of us.
So kind of in that vein, procedurally, so we meet on the 9th.
Yes.
Is there a city council work meeting that same evening?
There are interviews, I believe, council interviews that night.
Will they be in here?
You know, they'll be in, well, they have to start the meeting here, go into executive session.
I don't know, Zembek, can you put on the agenda moving them back to 8:45 so we don't have that problem? I don't like to be right. When I come to a meeting, I want to talk about what we got to talk about. I don't want to worry about, hey, it's 6 o'clock and council's coming.
Well, they'll start here at 5:30 for those interviews.
Yeah, and people, so they start coming in about 5:10. We're usually 15, 20 minutes into our meeting, and there's,
Yeah.
I think it makes it seem less professional. You know, I mean, I just think it's, so is there a way to move our meeting time around, move it back?
So yes, you do have the option to change, with the exception of the annual meeting. That the annual meeting requires a bylaws change, but otherwise, the majority of members can change the date and time.
Can you put on the agenda that we have move it back to 8:45, whatever. I'm suggesting 8:45.
Well, what we can do is, so we make on the agenda meeting time change, and then if you want to make a motion to do that, what does that do with your schedule, Jordan?
I can't really do 8:45, but I'm open to moving like the time.
So what's
But
your
the
work
morning
schedule
just-
like?
Well, I get off usually in the mornings, but then like usually I go home and go to sleep. So, because I work all night, but usually anytime afternoon, I can just wake up earlier and be here, but
So if we moved it to 4,
that's fine.
So think about it. Everybody think about it, because you all are involved in what we're doing, and we don't want to cut days long or days short, but we had a lot more leeway to talk when the meetings were open-ended.
If you would like to adjust the February 9th meeting, I will need to know that information preferably by noon on Friday.
You want to leave February, maybe
Leave
where it is,
February
and then
11.
we'll talk to
Yeah,
it.
we'll talk
'cause
about it.
I don't know what
Okay.
we got coming up.
Okay, we'll put it on the agenda then for a discussion item.
Could we move our February meeting to 4:30? Could you give us just 15 more minutes? Does that work?
That's-
Council will start here at 5:30 and then they'll,
They start here at 4:30?
What's on our, we got a lot on the agenda coming up, John?
Just one item.
For the interview.
No, I mean, or you all right?
So there's two items. There's one facade and one side lot.
You're saying that council meeting starts at 4:30?
at the
It is your
interview,
interview.
they start here, they go into executive session and then they'll go in the back.
Okay, so they would be here at 4:30, so we could start at 4:45.
That's-
Yeah.
Do them all.
They'll be
Okay.
gone out of the way at that point in time.
Okay.
They'll be
Okay.
gone.
Okay,
And then we could put on the agenda that we can address
I'm sorry?
moving it.
Council can start that.
Yeah, they can, but they'll probably, if they follow the format that they've used the last time, they'll start here, go on video, and then they'll adjourn to executive
I'll
session.
congregate later.
Yeah.
will
they
will they know we have a 4:45
Yes,
meeting?
that would be- we
They'll
can-
they'll
we
know
can
that,
always do
okay.
that. Yeah, I can
That
approve
works
that.
pretty good.
Okay.
We only got two
That's-
things on.
Yeah. Oh, wait, is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
And John, really, this
All
is
in-
the first time
We're just adjourned. We're
that
just-
we've done this. This is a
We'll have